Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Honeybees are great until they get into your house. Today we're going to talk about what to do. Also, everyone wants free stuff. Get free fertilizer with composting. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is David Glover. Mr. David is the Bartlett Bee Whisperer, and Mike Larrabee will be joining us later. Mike is the Compost Fairy. All right, so Mr. David, let's talk a little bit about bee removal. Okay. What are the steps that we need to know?
Well, first off, there's a difference between bees and wasps.
Okay.
And a lot of people can't tell the difference. In fact, some of the pest control companies don't know the difference. And so it's important to educate. Google knows a lot of things. So if you've got something, look it up, go to the images, go to pictures, and you can see there's a distinct difference between yellow jackets, wasps, hornets, and honeybees. Yeah. Best bet, if it's black and yellow, it's not a honeybee.
It's not a honeybee.
Honeybees are orange, brown, black, little muted colors. Bright yellow, yellow jackets. That's the first step. We need to know that they are indeed honeybees, because if they're honeybees, I can deal with them. If they're yellow jackets, wasps, hornets, that's your pest control company.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to deal with those, right?
No. The second step is we do an evaluation. We come to your home to see what's going on. And sometimes there still are yellow jackets. So I'll tell them what to do. But the next step is to do a thermal image of the house, to look where they're seeing their bees. And we can actually see the hive in the walls behind bricks. That is just a first step, because the bees incubate the brood about 94 degrees, 95 degrees. And that's what we see, but we don't see honey. The wax and the honey, they keep it cool. So I could have 2 cubic feet of bee space and then 20 feet of honey. So that gives us a starting place. And then we have to determine if we're going to do this through the walls from the inside or the outside. About 90% of the hives we remove from homes are in ceiling joists. They come from the outside of the house and they just go right across the joist as far as they can. And those we end up doing from the inside. Walls, sheetrock is a whole lot easier to repair than brick. But recently had to do a brick job where we had to remove the bricks to get the bees out. The hive was below the foundation of the house. The facade, the brick facade, was where they were coming in. And because the bees had been sprayed by a pest control company, they were trying to get a new exit from the house. And they see light. Inside light is the same as the sun. And so they're coming in around the window into the bedroom. When we remove the bees, we cut out all the comb. The brood comb goes into a hive box. Honeycomb goes into a bucket. And there's going to be trash comb. There's going to be comb that's empty, doesn't have anything in it. Or there'll be leavings where we're cutting the brood to fit into a hive frame. And those go into a trash bucket. The big thing for us is to save the brood. The brood is the babies, that's the eggs, the larvae, and the potential adult bees. And to find the queen. Without the queen, the hive is basically useless.
Do you normally find the queen?
I'm about 97% this year. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And the queen it's important because she's the only fertile female. In the spring and summer, we can always raise up a new queen. But in the fall, it's important to find the new queen and make sure that she's in there. When we do work from the inside of the house, we open a window. We actually open the shades so there's light on the glass. The bees that come into the house, instead of going all over the house and crazy, they go straight to the window. All nature wants to get out. And so when they get to the window, we just vacuum them out of the window, and they go into a 2-stage vacuum. The bees are safe in there.
Vacuum.
Vacuum.
But the bees are safe.
It's a think sawdust collectors. You've got the vacuum over here, but you've got your sawdust being collected here. The buckets that I use are basic 5-gallon buckets. They have 8 pieces of plastic foundation Lincoln logged into the bucket. In the bottom of the bucket is a 1/2 inch of foam. The bees get sucked into there. They hit the foam, they bounce. They have an exoskeleton. They're real bouncy. And we can get about 20 to 30,000 bees per bucket.
Wow, really?
Really. And in midsummer, those hives, we can leave with 3 buckets of bees.
Wow.
And when we're setting up the new hive, we open the bucket and we release the bees back into their hive. It's an eviction, right. It's a removal, it's a relocation, but their home smells like home. And so they go right into the box.
About that. So let me ask you, you said earlier that some of those bees were sprayed. What happens to bees when they're sprayed with a pesticide?
Well, they die. Okay. It's a side, you know.
Right.
Homicide, pesticide,
right.
Something's dead. And when the bees are directly sprayed, those will die. But wax is very absorbent.
Okay.
And a lot of times when people use a can of wasp spray and they spray at a hive of bees, that first piece of comb catches the pesticide and stops it. And it doesn't enter in the rest of the hive. So the bees don't get killed. They're not like wasps. When people call about bees in a house, they're looking at a small nest. They're thinking wasp. The reality is it can be huge. The first few months that they build in a house, they'll build 2 cubic feet of comb.
Wow.
That's cubic feet.
That's impressive.
And that first piece of wax stops the pesticide. And if the bees can find another exit, then they'll use that as their new entrance. I've seen on chimneys where they've been on one side of the chimney, they sprayed, and the bees now use the other side of the chimney as their entrance, and they build all the way around the chimney.
Wow. What kind of experience do you need to be able to remove bees?
You need a background in construction. You need to understand how houses are built. You need to know what's behind the walls. And you need to know that there are pipes, there's electricity, there are other things in that wall besides bees. And when we work through those walls, I'm always looking for electricity. This is an exterior wall. They could be bringing electricity along the side and down the wall. And when we find the wires, you don't want to cut them. It's not good for us or the bees.
Right.
And I've been in situations where there were 9 wires coming through. I've been there with the can lights, where the bees have built their comb over and around the can lights in the people's ceilings. You know, on a fireplace, you've got the can lights in the front. It really looks nice inside the house, but it makes it difficult in removing the bees because we have to remove all that comb off the wires and off the lights.
Right. How about that?
So construction, deconstruction.
Deconstruction. Okay.
And making it possible for the homeowners to get that put back together. I like to call it minimally invasive. The smaller the hole, the better for me.
Okay. Yeah.
And the better for the contractor who comes and does the repair.
Sure. Have you ever experienced a time where the bees were actually dead that you went in to remove?
Several times.
Okay. How was that?
Well, it stinks in both ways.
Right.
You're thinking 40,000 bees. One bee doesn't smell bad, but when they're all sitting on top of each other, they start to molder and they smell like a dead dog.
Wow. How about that?
It's pretty bad. Plus it stinks because there's nothing to save. So I've had situations where the bees have been sprayed and they're all dead. And the honey is leaking down through the walls. It just coats through the insulation. It comes underneath the wall, gets into the padding of the carpet. And one house in Germantown, they knew something was wrong because their floor was squishy and sticky.
Okay.
And spraying is never a good answer because in the end, you're going to have a higher cost in the repair because all of that wet stuff has to come out of the house.
Wow.
If we can get it on the front end before anything gets sprayed, I have little controls that I use to keep the honey from leaking into the house as we remove them.
Okay.
Catch it, you know, absorb the honey that's pulled up and get it out.
So what happens to the honey though? I mean, does some of that pesticide actually get into that honey, you think?
Well, I'm a little nervy when it comes to pesticides. Okay. So if I come to a hive that's been sprayed and I can see in the wax that it's been sprayed, that honey's never saved, it's never used. I talk with the homeowners and ask them if they want some of the honey. If the homeowner's willing to eat the honey, they haven't sprayed the bees. So that honey can be saved and it can be fed back to the bees or it can be harvested and eaten.
Wow.
So the largest hive I removed had 20 gallons of honey in it.
20 gallons?
20 gallons.
Oh my gosh.
And think a 5-gallon bucket, about 50 pounds. That's 200 pounds of honey sitting in someone's ceiling.
Wow.
And if it falls, the ceiling crashes in.
Wow. How about that?
It's crazy.
David, that's some good stuff, man. We appreciate you coming on the show and sharing that with us.
Oh, I love coming back here.
We know you do. We appreciate it. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mike, we're glad to have you on, man. We're going to talk about composting. You know, a lot of people want to know about composting. A lot of people, believe it or not, are not doing composting correctly. So you're going to walk us through that process, right?
For sure. I'm happy to be here. It's good to see you.
Good.
Yeah.
So how you want to get started?
Oh, well, so this is something that we do with demos, and this is sort of a why, why are we composting?
Okay.
And we start with why and then go to how.
Okay. Sure.
So this is sort of the journey of our food right here, if you will.
All right.
So we start with a homegrown tomato right there, and that's where the whole thing starts as far as composting is concerned, how it hits us.
Okay.
And then we've got good thing this isn't smell-o-vision. This is this is day one, so we've got some fresh stuff in there.
Look at that.
And a little caveat on that, that would make an unbalanced product right there, because this is mostly nitrogen. There's very little carbon in that right now, and to balance that, we would be adding a whole lot of carbon to it. And good carbon sources, leaves this time of year.
Sure.
Also sawdust to make friends with a carpenter.
That would help, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure. But you want to watch out for treated lumber there.
That's right.
And also black walnut, because they will affect the growth of some plants.
Okay.
If you're growing veggies, that
Good
could
deal.
be a problem.
Good deal.
And then, so compost wants a lot of the same stuff that we do to be healthy and to complete the metabolic processes. So you want to make sure it's got enough water, moisture content needs to be good, and air, so it needs oxygen to be a good, healtty anaerobic.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's true.
Air.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, for sure, and it will for sure decompose in the absence of oxygen. But good, healthy compost needs oxygen.
Okay.
So you want to turn it every once in a while. So this is sort of an example of what it looks like when it's first turned. And you see, like, the tender greens, like the spinach and all that stuff is gone already. It's already breaking down. But the more fibrous stuff, you know, like, for example, there's a pineapple top in there, and the heavy leaves and stuff like that take a little bit longer to break down. You still be able to recognize those at this point.
Okay.
And then,
you know, so far.
yeah, next go round, things start to break down. You see it starting to look more like dirt, I guess. But you see the sticks are still in there, and the beech leaves and stuff like that, oak leaves that take longer to break down. And then right over here is where you start getting into the exciting stuff.
That's exciting.
Yeah, this is pretty close to being finished compost right there, and you really notice that it it has a different character. It starts to get like looser and lighter, and it smells kind of woodsy and sweet and nice, and that's sort of where it starts to get finished. So, and then we cure it up at that point, and you let it sit, and that's when it sort of really develops the nutrients that you're going to be looking for as a soil amendment.
Now, how long would you let it sit?
Well, okay, so this whole process, it depends. Composting is sort of a input in, output out kind of a situation. So the more you fool with it, the faster it's going to break down, and the faster you get to a finished product. So if you follow like the University of California method, for example, and you're turning it every day or two, and maintaining a consistent moisture level and keeping that oxygenated pile going, you can get to this stage here in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Sometimes. Wow. We have a much bigger facility. We're dealing with windrows, so we're every couple of weeks we're making sure that we're turning it, especially during the growing season when it's hot. Gotcha. We get to here generally in about maybe 2 months, 3 months. And then it sits and cures up and in the cure pile for another couple of months from there. And then you get this is a poor little volunteer that I got.
Trying to hang in there.
Yeah, I picked him out of the garden this morning against his will because he was happy where he's at. But he's sitting in some brand new sifted and finished compost.
Man,
and
that looks good.
It looks pretty good, I got to say. And good heavy nitrogen feeder like that. That tomato would love a lot of that at home. Wow. But yeah, this is what we're putting back out in the world instead of letting it get to the landfill where it's going to going to cause problems instead of be helpful in growing stuff in our home landscape.
Some good stuff. Let's talk about the carbon-nitrogen ratio.
Okay.
Because a lot of us get that wrong.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's not a one-to-one.
Yeah, it's not one-to-one, right.
One-to-one. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier. If it smells funky, you don't have enough carbon in it. So you want to be adding carbon. And the general rule of thumb is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 1 carbon ratio to nitrogen. You want to be stockpiling those leaves this time of year because they're valuable. And if you're going to be composting in the summertime when there's not a leaves available, maybe unless you got a magnolia or something like that.
Right?
You want to hang. If you have space for them, it's good to hang on to those so that you can add those as you're bringing your kitchen scraps and your grass clippings out to the compost pile and adding that nitrogen.
Okay, let's give the folks some examples. What is considered a carbon?
Yeah, carbon. So leaves are like the most readily available source. Everybody's got a tree in their yard or in their neighborhood that they can shag some leaves from, and don't put them on the side of the road in bags.
That's right.
Yeah, you can cut down on your waste stream. Yeah, save your leaves. Save your leaves. They're important. But also sawdust is a great source. Shredded newspaper is another one that you can get your hands on pretty easy. You want to stay away from paper that's bleached if you can help it, and you stay away from paper that's been any kind of wax coating or heavy dyes or anything like that too. But those are some fairly easily accessible carbon sources for folks.
All right. What about the nitrogen sources?
Nitrogen is greens. So anything that comes out of your kitchen, for the most part, there's some carbon that you're going to be putting in your kitchen bucket. But most of your stuff that's coming out of your kitchen, your veggie and fruit scraps and stuff like that, is going to be heavy on nitrogen.
Okay.
Also, grass clippings, which are great, and they break down super quick too.
All right, so we talked about the good things you should put in your compost pile. What about those things we shouldn't put in?
That's a good point. It's a question of scale, but in a backyard compost situation, yeah, you absolutely want to stay away from animal products, any kind of processed or cooked foods. If it came out of a bag or a box, probably not such a good idea to be putting it in your compost pile. And anything that you've cooked, you want to stay away from too. Oils. Bones, anything like that, because that's the difference between healthy compost that's useful in your environment and a rat farm. You don't want to be growing rats.
Right, yeah, you don't want to be doing
that. Has enough rats.
Yeah, we got enough
of that. We don't need any more of those.
I'm with you on that.
So yeah, that's a great point.
Okay. What about scale of the compost pile? Does it matter? I mean, as a homeowner, should we start with a smaller?
Yeah, that's also a great point. If you want a really hot compost, there's sort of a critical mass in terms of volume that you're going to be looking at. And that's usually about a cubic meter, which is a lot if you're thinking about it, and it could take a while to get that. But the thing to remember with composting is it's a fairly forgiving art, and no matter how you do it within reason, you're going to come out with a fairly useful product. It's efficiency. The more energy you put in, the faster it goes. The more you are concerned about properly sized compost pile and your inputs, the better the nutrient value of the compost that you're making is going to be. Another thing about that is you want to have at least 2 containers. So that one can do the curing, right? Well, you're starting a second pile because you're not going to stop eating. You're not going to stop mowing your grass, and the leaves aren't going to stop falling. So you need to have a second pile or a second container available so that this first one can finish doing what it's doing, and then you just flip and start that cycle again. And you can do a heap, I guess, in a bin on the ground with that soil contact, which I find is helpful because you have more access to those microbes that are in the ground that are going to be doing the decompositional work for us anyway, and worms and all that sort of other stuff. But you can also, there are lots of containers on the market, tumblers and all kinds, and worm bins and stuff like that as well, for sure. Yeah.
All right, we appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about composting, man, because you are the compost fairy. Right?
I am the compost fairy. Yeah, we're serving Memphis for sure. Happy to help with the education process and diverting some of that waste out of the landfill and turning it back into some of that good stuff.
Well, look, you're doing a good job, man. So we definitely do appreciate that. Thanks for being here. All right.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So we're looking at the family plot compost pile over here, and we have constructed it correctly in that there are 2 vessels so that we can rotate back and forth. The rotations, due to the influx from garden residue here, has gotten a little bit screwed up. So some of this fresh stuff should be over here. Well, you get the good cooked down stuff on the bottom on that side. Another thing, the little microbes, our friends in the soil, there are about 7 billion of them in a cup of good healthy soil, like a lot of edge in what they're chewing on. They'll break it down faster, so it might help to knock some of these big pieces down just a little bit, make smaller particles so that they can get at it a little bit faster. And it's obvious that this could use a little bit more engagement as there are trees growing out of it. So turning it and attending to it will give you a better product. Other than that, if you wanted to boost it, I tell people all the time that coffee grounds are great because they're basically all edge and they'll get your critters going good and fast.
All right, so here's our Q&A segment. Y'all ready?
Ready?
We got some good questions here. Mr. David, you help us out, we get in trouble, okay?
Good luck.
All right, here's our first viewer email. Does imidacloprid hurt bees? And this is from Nanetta via YouTube. Good question.
It is
one that we get all the time. We are glad to have a bee expert here. So what say you?
Anything that ends with side
Okay.
is going to kill the bees.
Okay.
What we have found in studies is the imidacloprid that finds its way into hives causes the bees to become drunk.
Okay.
It messes with their ability to orient and how to GPS back to the hive. The good thing is bees that can't find their way back to the hive can't do the waggle dance and tell the other bees where to go to find food. Earlier this year we had the first pan-European study on neonicotinoids, and imidacloprid is one of the neonics. And what they found, if you read what hits the internet, 60% of the bees died. But if you dig down in the actual study, you see that the UK, Hungary, and Germany were involved in the study. Germany lost no bees. The difference between Germany, the UK, and Hungary is Germany went in with strong, healthy hives. The hives that were in the UK and Hungary had disease, they had problems to begin with. Germany also had alternative food sources for the bees to get to. Where UK and Hungary, it was just rapeseed. That's all they had. And if all you're eating is green beans all day long, your system's going to get messed up. Germany, because of the alternative food source, the bees that did the waggle dance for the alternate, that came back, the bees were able to go and get food. And they survived. They made it through winter. So and this is the advice I give to the kids that I mentor, strong, healthy hives. If you don't have strong, healthy hives to start with, you're going to have problems. Germany is doing that. They went in the study with a strong, healthy hive, and there was an alternative food source. So the bees that did the waggle dance told the other bees where to go. In UK and Hungary, that's all they had to get from. And so a starving man with poison apples eventually is going to eat an apple. And the bees did too.
Wow. Strong, healthy hives.
And alternative food sources.
Alternative food sources, because the bees do the waggle dance. And the ones that are drunk and can't GPS back home, don't tell them where to go. The ones that do come home, that's where they go. That's where the next foragers go. So they're going to go to the other foods.
Very good.
By the way, water's poisonous too to bees. And us.
All right, Ms. Nanetta. Good question. I think we got you a good answer. All right. Here's our next viewer email. There is something eating the leaves of my broccoli. How do I control the pest without using hard chemicals? And this is from Mary in Germantown. Something's eating the leaf of the broccoli, but guess what? She doesn't want to use any hard chemicals. And that's good.
And it's very good.
That's good.
And I don't think she has to.
No, I don't think you have to.
Because, I mean, we don't have a picture.
Right.
But most likely the culprit is either going to be some kind of worm, a loper, something like that will be easily controlled with something called BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis, which is a naturally occurring bacteria that gets into the gut of these worms, and it kills them, the caterpillars, it kills them.
Right.
So.
And you can kill them without using the hard chemicals.
Right.
Right. Because you're right. It's probably a cabbage looper or a cabbage worm, right? And they're feeding on the broccoli. And if you go ahead and use this BT product, which is Dipel as a name for it. Javelin is another name. It'll do the trick.
Yes.
Natural occurring organism. So it will do the trick for you, Miss Mary.
But just remember, when it rains, you're going to have to reapply.
Good point. That's a good point.
Because it's just washes off.
That's right.
So you have to reapply.
All right. So again, Miss Mary, no hard chemicals, BT. It'll do the trick for you. So, Ms. Joella, today we're out of time. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. Family Plot has received another award. Last month, I received the 2018 Media Award from the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council for sharing correct tree care practices on the show. I want to thank the fine folks from TUFC for this award. What an honor it was to receive this award. This is truly a team award, so I want to thank them again. I'm Chris Cooper. This is our next to last episode this year. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.